Continues to go to work with the move and the throwdown.
Right here, look at Scotty B going to work in the paint. Hello!
Dependable. Scotty throws it up and he says, yeah, it's our night in Toronto.
Scotty Barnes just dropped 23 points, 25 rebounds, and 10 assists, and now he's worth $270 million. But here's what makes this story insane. On draft night, the NBA didn't just doubt this pick, they trashed it. Analysts questioned it, fans hated it, experts called it a reach. Some even said the Raptors completely messed up. And if we're being honest, at that moment, the criticism wasn't crazy. No jumper, no clear position, not a proven scorer. This wasn't supposed to work, but that's exactly why this story matters. Because what happened next didn't just prove people wrong, it exposed something bigger. It showed how badly the NBA can misjudge talent, how entire rooms full of scouts, analysts, and experts can look at the same player and completely miss what actually matters. So here's the real question. Did the NBA fail Scotty Barnes? Or did Toronto just see what everyone else was too blind to recognize? Because the answer to that question changes how you look at the entire draft process. If you think NBA experts always know what they're talking about, this video is going to challenge that. And if you understand stories like this, the ones most people overlook, hit subscribe. Because this isn't just about one player, this is about how wrong the system can be. Scotty Barnes wasn't raised chasing NBA dreams, he was raised trying to survive. Riviera Beach, Florida, a place where crime isn't rare, it's routine, where opportunities are limited, and the margin for error is almost zero. And the craziest part, just minutes away across a single bridge, there's a completely different world. Mansions, money, comfort, same city. Two completely different realities. And Scotty grew up on the side where nothing was guaranteed. His mother raised 4 kids on her own, no safety net, no backup plan. Just constant work, long nights, early mornings, doing whatever it took to keep things together. And Scotty saw all of it, the pressure, the exhaustion, the sacrifice. He later said his mom gave everything she had just so her kids could walk into school with confidence, even when they didn't have much. That kind of environment doesn't just build character, it builds a different kind of hunger, the kind most players never develop. Basketball wasn't a dream for him at the start. It wasn't about fame or the NBA, it was an escape. Every night he went to the Salvation Army gym. No refs, no structure, just grown men competing. Winner stays on. If you lose, you sit. And if you sit too long, you're done for the night. That kind of environment doesn't build highlights, it builds toughness. It forces you to fight for every possession, to earn every moment, to survive. And that's exactly what Scotty Barnes learned to do. But here's where everything shifts, and this is the part the NBA never saw coming. Not because of talent, not because of hype, but because one person made a decision that changed his entire life. The NBA saw a player with flaws. They saw a broken jumper, no clear position, and a player who didn't fit the traditional mold. But what they didn't see was the environment that built him. They didn't see the mindset, and they definitely didn't see what was about to change everything. Because the real turning point in Scotty Barnes' life didn't come from a scout, a ranking, or a highlight mixtape. It came from someone the NBA would never even consider part of the evaluation process. John Simpson, not a famous coach, not a recruiter, just a man who understood exactly what happens when kids are left without guidance. At one point, Simpson stopped coaching because life got busy, but then he found out that one of his former players had been killed in a gang-related situation, and that moment hit differently. It wasn't just sad, it was personal. He felt like he had walked away from someone who needed him. From that day forward, he made a decision that would change more than just one life. He would never walk away again. So when he saw Scotty Barnes playing in that chaotic gym environment, he didn't just see talent. He saw something the NBA constantly overlooks. A kid who hadn't been developed yet. A kid who didn't need hype, but needed structure, discipline, and belief. Simpson brought Scotty into his AAU program, but more importantly, he brought him into his life. He trained him, mentored him, spent time with him, and gave him something he had never consistently experienced before: stability. And eventually, that relationship became bigger than basketball. By 5th grade, Scotty Barnes moved in with the Simpson family, and just like that, his entire world shifted. He went from instability to structure, from chaos to consistency, from survival to real opportunity. This was the moment everything started separating him from the version of himself the NBA would later judge. There's one moment that explains everything about where he came from. One day, Simpson brought home chicken wings. Nothing special, just food. But Scotty's reaction said everything. He grabbed as many as he could immediately, not because he was greedy, but because he didn't know if there would be any left later. That instinct doesn't come from nowhere. That comes from experience. That comes from growing up in a situation where nothing is guaranteed. And this is exactly the type of detail the NBA completely misses when evaluating players. They analyze mechanics, measure wingspan, and debate positions, but they don't measure hunger, they don't measure survival instincts, and they don't measure what a player had to go through just to get here. And that's why they got this wrong. Because once Scotty Barnes had structure, once he had stability, and once he had someone who actually believed in him, everything started to change. This is the part where the story stops being about potential and starts becoming about proof. And what happened next is exactly where the gap between what the NBA thought and what reality actually was starts to get exposed. Once Scotty Barnes finally had structure in his life, everything the NBA thought they knew about him started to fall apart. Because now, for the first time, he wasn't just surviving, he was developing, and the results showed immediately. At Cardinal Newman High School, he didn't ease into anything. He dominated from day one. As a freshman, he was already doing things upperclassmen struggled with: handling the ball, defending multiple positions, making plays that didn't look normal for his age. Coaches noticed, scouts started paying attention, but even then, most people still didn't fully understand what they were looking at. So he leveled up. He transferred to NSU University School, where the competition was tougher and the expectations were higher. And instead of slowing down, he took over. A 36-2 record, state championship, national attention. Then he did it again. Another championship, more wins, more proof. At this point, winning wasn't just something he did, it was who he was. But here's where it gets interesting. Even with all that success, there was still one team that kept stopping him. One team that exposed the gap between good and elite. Montverde Academy, the best high school basketball program in the country. And every time Scotty Barnes faced them, the result was the same. Loss. Not once, twice. Same stage, same outcome. And those losses hit different, because when you're dominating everyone else but still can't beat the best, it forces you to face a different kind of truth. It forces you to make a decision. Are you really as good as you think you are, or is there another level you haven't reached yet? At first, Scotty chose pride. He didn't want to join them. He wanted to beat them. He wanted to prove he didn't need them. But then something happened that shifted everything. At a USA basketball camp, he met Cade Cunningham, the future #1 overall pick. They connected instantly, and one conversation turned into something bigger. Cade put him on the phone with Montverd's coach, and in that moment, Scotty Barnes had to make a decision that would define his entire path. And this is where most players get it wrong, because joining the best team in the country doesn't guarantee anything. It means less spotlight, less control, more competition. But Scotty made the decision anyway. He joined Montverde, and what happened next didn't just prove he could compete. It proved the NBA had no idea what kind of player he was becoming. What happened at Montverde didn't just elevate Scotty Barnes, it completely changed the level he was playing at. Surrounded by elite talent, he didn't disappear. He adapted. The team went 25-0, dominating every opponent, winning games by nearly 40 points on average. Nobody could compete, and Scotty wasn't just along for the ride. He proved he could impact winning at the highest level of high school basketball. He became a McDonald's All-American, won on the national stage, and stacked gold medals with Team USA. At that point, there was no question anymore. He was an NBA-level player. The only question was, how good? But this is where the NBA started getting it wrong again. Because when Scotty Barnes got to Florida State, he didn't follow the typical star player script. He didn't chase points. He didn't force highlights. He didn't try to prove he was the guy. Instead, he focused on doing everything else: defense, playmaking, leadership, energy, the things that don't always show up in the box score. And because of that, people misunderstood him. They looked at the stats and thought he wasn't dominant. They saw the role and assumed limitations. They judged the surface and completely missed the substance. And somehow, in the middle of all that confusion, Scotty Barnes did something almost nobody talks about enough. He won both Freshman of the Year and 6th Man of the Year in the same season. Think about that. The best freshman in the conference, and not even a full-time starter. That alone should have told everyone something different was happening. But instead of adjusting their perspective, the NBA doubled down on the doubt. No jumper, no position, not a top pick. That narrative followed him all the way to the 2021 NBA draft. And when draft night arrived, it felt like everything was already decided. The Toronto Raptors had the 4th pick, and everyone, analysts, fans, mock drafts, locked in on one name: Jalen Suggs. It was the safe pick, the obvious pick, the one that made sense to everyone watching. And then Toronto did something the NBA didn't expect. They ignored the noise, they ignored the consensus, they ignored what everyone thought was right, and they picked Scotty Barnes.
With the 4th pick in the 2021 NBA draft, the Toronto Raptors select Scotty Barnes.
And instantly, the reaction was exactly what you'd expect: confusion, criticism, backlash. People didn't just question the pick, they attacked it. They said Toronto reached. They said it didn't make sense. They said it was a mistake. But what nobody realized in that moment was that this mistake, from his very first game in the NBA, Scotty Barnes didn't look like a project. He didn't look raw. He didn't look like a mistake. He looked ready. He was defending every position, pushing the ball in transition, making reads that rookies aren't supposed to make, and impacting the game in ways that didn't always show up on stat sheets. And slowly, the same people who doubted him started to realize something uncomfortable. They might have been wrong. Not just a little wrong, completely wrong. By the end of his rookie season, there was was no debate left. Scotty Barnes was named Rookie of the Year. In just one season, he flipped the entire narrative. The same player people said couldn't score, couldn't fit, and shouldn't have been picked was now the best rookie in the league. And just like that, the bad pick conversation started to disappear. But what makes this story different is that it didn't stop there. Because even when adversity hit, injuries, setbacks, momentum being cut short, Scotty didn't fade. And then came the moment that proved everything. When Kevin Durant requested a trade, the entire NBA started making moves. Teams were willing to give up everything to get him. And Toronto, they had a chance. But there was one condition that never changed. Scotty Barnes was untouchable, not included, not negotiable. 1 year into his career, and he was already more valuable to the franchise than a generational superstar trade. Then came the commitment, a 5-year deal worth up to $270 million, the largest contract in Toronto Raptors history. That wasn't potential anymore. That was belief. That was the franchise saying, we're building everything around you. And Scotty responded exactly how you'd expect. Career highs, takeover performances, and finally, the moment that completely shut down every remaining doubt. A historic triple-double, 23 points, 25 rebounds, and 10 assists.
Scotty B squares up. Ready. Barnes, tons of contact counted in the foul.
The kind of performance that doesn't just prove you belong, it proves you're that guy. And now look at where we are. 2-time All-Star, face of the franchise, one of the most unique players in the league. And that same kid who once worried about whether there would be food left on the table is now leading a billion-dollar organization. So yeah, on draft night, they said Toronto made a mistake, but maybe the real mistake was the NBA thinking they had Scotty Barnes figured out. If you want more stories like this, the ones that expose what people get wrong, hit subscribe, because the next one, it might be even crazier.